how my sister stole our mother's house and the family I lost in the process. My F-34 sister, F-27, stole our family home. There's no easy way to start this story, so I'll begin with the woman who held our family together, my mother. She was our rock, a fiercely independent woman who single-handedly raised my sister Lila and me after Dad left when we were little. Mom was resilient, holding down multiple jobs to make sure we never went without. It was always the three of us. She taught us the value of hard work, of family, of sticking together. I used to think our family bond was unbreakable. I was wrong. Growing up, Lila was charming, the type of person who could make you feel special with just a glance. But that charm had a darker side. She could be manipulative, bending people to her will when it suited her. At first, I thought it was just harmless childhood stuff, stealing my toys, sweet-talking Mom into letting her skip chores, playing mind games to win over our friends. But as we grew older, her tactics evolved. She'd flirt her way into better grades, con people into paying for her drinks, and eventually found herself in circles where money and status seemed to mean everything. It was unsettling, but I still loved her. I'd always tell myself, that's just Lila. 2 years ago, Mom started showing early signs of dementia. At first it was subtle, forgetting where she'd put her keys or calling me by Lila's name. It felt innocent at first, like she was just aging, like it was something we could laugh about. But as time passed, it became apparent that this was serious. Lila and I discussed her condition, and I offered to have Mom move in with me. I live a few states away, and I thought maybe a fresh environment would be good for her, a place where she wouldn't be alone. But Lila insisted that she could handle it, convincing me it would be easier on Mom to stay close to her doctors, her friends, and the life she knew. I felt relieved, trusting that Lila would do what was best for Mom. Lila's words were soothing, convincing me that I was doing the right thing by keeping my distance. Over time, though, I started noticing small, unsettling changes. Every few months, I'd visit, and each time, something would seem off. Mom's house, the home we'd grown up in, was looking emptier. The antique dishes she loved were gone, the family photos were missing, even Dad's old records vanished. When I asked, Lila brushed it off, saying Mom was decluttering, or that she'd sold a few things to help with the bills. Mom was also wearing older, worn-out clothes, and her bank account looked thinner every time I peeked. When I pressed her on it, Lila got defensive, claiming that Mom's medical bills were skyrocketing. And yet, Lila's life looked strangely different. She started driving a brand new car, going on these exotic vacations, flaunting designer handbags, and living a life I knew she couldn't afford. It gnawed at me, but whenever I asked, Lila would paint me as paranoid or out of touch with Mom's reality. "You're not here," she'd say, her voice dripping with guilt tripping. "You wouldn't understand how hard it's been." I'd always relent, feeling guilty that I wasn't there every day to help. Then, last month, I got a panicked call from Lila. She was in tears, telling me she was drowning in debt trying to support Mom, that the medical expenses were out of control. She said she'd tried everything, but that the only option left was to sell Mom's house. The desperation in her voice was palpable, and I was 1,000 miles away, feeling utterly helpless. So I agreed, reluctantly, thinking it was the only way to keep things afloat. When I flew in to help with the move, the truth began unraveling faster than I could brace myself for. Mom's house was already sold, quick, even for a rushed sale. When I questioned her about it, Lila had some excuse ready about the urgent timing. And yet, Mom was now living in a tiny, shabby apartment far from the comfortable house we'd grown up in. Every time I asked her why, she'd respond with confused sadness, saying she didn't remember deciding to move. Lila brushed it off as Mom being forgetful. But that answer didn't sit right. I started digging around, piecing things together in my head. During one visit, I found some documents tucked away in Mom's drawer. They were the sale papers for the house, but the signatures, they weren't Mom's. They were Lila's, dated months before she'd ever called me about the crushing debt. I felt the floor give way beneath me. This was my own sister, my flesh and blood, who'd orchestrated everything behind my back. I confronted her, and that's when the real nightmare began. She exploded, accusing me of never caring, of leaving her to handle the burden of our mother. The words were brutal, cutting deep, reminding me of every visit I'd skipped, every moment of doubt I'd had. She twisted my guilt, my love for Mom, and used it like a weapon against me. I left that night with a feeling I can only describe as betrayal so complete, it felt like a physical wound. The next day, I hired a lawyer. I didn't want to take things to court, but I knew Lila couldn't keep getting away with this. The investigation revealed the depths of her deceit. She'd been slowly draining Mom's accounts, selling her possessions, funneling the money into her own life of luxury. She'd even manipulated legal documents to take full control of Mom's finances, going so far as to fake a doctor's note claiming Mom was mentally incompetent. It was all there, in black and white. Lila hadn't just tricked Mom. She'd used her illness as a way to take control of everything she wanted. Going to court was horrific. Lila, as always, knew how to play her role. She hired an expensive attorney, no doubt paid for with Mom's money, and put on a performance worthy of an Oscar. She wept on the stand, painting herself as the martyr sister who'd sacrificed everything to care for our mother. Her attorney dragged up our past, painting me as the distant, irresponsible sister who hadn't been there when it mattered. Family members I hadn't spoken to in years showed up, whispering that I was after the money. I felt like I was in a nightmare, every accusation, every twisted truth turning my family against me. Meanwhile, Mom sat in the back, confused, frightened, barely recognizing me. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Lila was ordered to return a portion of the money, but there was no satisfaction in it. She vanished shortly after, emptying her accounts and disappearing. I heard she might be in another state, but no one really knows. She left nothing but shattered relationships and a mountain of debt. I got the house back in Mom's name, but at what cost? Every time I walk through it, it feels like a mausoleum of broken trust and lost memories. Mom's condition has only worsened. She barely knows who I am most days, let alone remembers what happened. Sometimes I catch her looking at me with this vacant, haunted expression, like she's lost something she can't name. She often asks about Lila, wondering why she doesn't visit anymore, why the family isn't together like it used to be. I've tried telling her the truth, but it breaks her heart every time. Most days, I lie, telling her Lila's just busy and will be by soon. The family I once believed was unbreakable is gone. Relatives who once adored me now won't speak to me, convinced I'm the villain in this twisted story. Friends we shared have all but vanished, taking sides without knowing the whole truth. And me? I've become a shell of who I used to be, constantly questioning if there was something I could have done differently. If I hadn't been so naive, maybe I could have protected Mom better. Maybe I could have saved our family. Sometimes I dream about my sister, and in those dreams, she's the Lila I used to know, the sister who laughed with me, the one who shared all my childhood secrets. But when I wake up, I remember the truth. She betrayed me, stole from our mother, and shattered everything we built. Now, all I have left is the hollow shell of our family home and a mother who slips further from me each day. I'll spend the rest of my life wondering how it all fell apart, wishing I could go back and somehow undo the moment I trusted her.
Wait a sec, you left your mom with someone you knew was manipulative, and now you're surprised this happened. Maybe you should have stepped up instead of moving states away.
Honestly, it sounds like your sister did all the heavy lifting while you lived comfortably states away. Maybe she felt entitled to compensation for caring for your mom alone. You swoop in at the last minute acting like the hero, but where were you when things got tough?
Man, that's rough, but honestly, caregiving is hard. Maybe your sister was overwhelmed and snapped. Doesn't excuse her actions, but perhaps there's more to the story.
Your sister did it, and legally, it is quite unbelievable how she got this done. There are major felonies this woman has committed, forging documents and taking advantage of a helpless adult. It makes me doubt the whole point of having a legal system in place to protect the weak. Maybe the notaries, the lawyers, or the real estate agents that were involved all wanted something, so they chose to ignore it. With the number of cases of elder abuse that have been witnessed, there should be stricter measures regarding the assets of old people. I recommend that you bring legal proceedings not only against your sister but also against enabling professionals.
In my culture, we honor our elders by caring for them ourselves. You should have taken your mother in instead of trusting someone else.
This is why you need legal protections like power of attorney when dealing with a parent's declining health. You dropped the ball big time.
Your story sounds fishy. Are you sure you're not leaving out details to make yourself look better? There's always two sides.
Honestly, you should focus less on blaming your sister and more on being there for your mom now. She needs you more than ever.
Maybe your sister felt abandoned. You moved away, left her to deal with everything, and now you're playing the victim. Come on.
Your mom hides the manipulative daughter and an oblivious one who moved you away. Maybe she wasn't sent to make it out to be. Perhaps this dysfunction started with her, and you're both products of her parenting.
Wow! Your sister is a sociopath. She manipulated everyone around her for personal gain. Cut her out of your life completely.
This entire situation could have been avoided if you had taken a more proactive role in your mother's care. You mentioned that your sister was manipulative since childhood, yet you still trusted her with such a significant responsibility. That's not just naive, it's irresponsible. Living states away doesn't absolve you of your duty as a daughter. Perhaps your sister felt overwhelmed and isolated, leading her down a dark path. While her actions are inexcusable, it's important to acknowledge that caregiving can be an immense burden, especially when left to one person. Maybe if you had been more present both physically and emotionally, your family wouldn't have fallen apart.
In my culture, caring for one's parents is the highest honor and duty. The fact that your sister exploited your mother is not only disgraceful but brings shame upon your entire family lineage.
Are you sure your sister acted alone? Sometimes other family members or external influences can manipulate situations like this. Might be worth digging deeper.
I can't even imagine how betrayed you must feel. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Wishing you strength and healing.
Not to be harsh, but posting this online won't solve anything. Maybe focus on legal action and taking care of your mom instead of seeking validation from strangers.
Elderly care is expensive and emotionally draining. If your sister found a way to secure her own future after sacrificing her time and energy, can you really blame her? Survival of the fittest, even within families.